Custom makeup is by far one of the most important features of the game and the easiest way to elevate any outfit with just a simple face. I'm going to show you how to take a face from looking like this to this. So we're going to start today by making two more realistic faces based on two of the old presets. So here is face one. So for the first face, we are going to be choosing a really old one. And I feel like the Gaia one, this one here, is kind of a good place to start because I feel like it's still a pretty popular theme. And as you can see, this doesn't look like the most realistic. So we're going to be working on this one to try and recreate it in a more realistic way. So to start off, I always start with the contour first, which is called shading in DTI custom makeup. And there's quite a few that I like. I like the more harsh ones with the really dark cheeks, just because it looks a lot more realistic when it's colored. And usually I like to make it this really dark like this, and it's gonna look kind of crazy because obviously it doesn't match the skin tone. But then if you go to the other category and scroll all the way to the bottom, you can pick between these two, and what these are going to do is add a highlight. And right now it still looks kind of crazy, but we're going to make it similar to the skin tone. And with Gaia, there's a little bit of difference between a normal realistic face, which I'll get into in the next one, but Gaia has really bright highlight and they have very dark tan skin, so it's going to look a little different, a little more mismatched in this face at least, just because simply that's the makeup style. But no, I prefer ones with a really harsh bone structure or shadows in the facial area. It just adds a lot more depth. There's quite a few good feminine contours that you can use. This is one that I always used to use. I feel like it's good. I do like it, but I feel like it's just too focused on just the cheeks. I kind of like the ones at the top as well. They kind of add everything. So I use this one sometimes, but this one isn't as harsh on the cheeks with the structure. There's some good male ones. This one here is really good. You can just play with the opacity and the darkness. So I'd have it probably somewhere like this, especially for this theme. And then usually I go to the noses after, because I like to start with the shape of the face and then the center. And a nose that I love using for a lot of faces is this one here, 481. But for this theme, since it's a very specific makeup style, there are noses like this that you can either layer on or just use in general. And they have very bright highlight. So we're going to go with this. I am going to delete the first nose. Actually, it kind of looked better with it on, so I'm going to put that on. Just means we're going to have to sacrifice a spot. And then usually what I like to do is add the eyes, and for this look, I like using the new eyes. I think they came out with the Lunar New Year update, and yeah, I really like using some of these eyes. But to be fair, I don't know, they're not as realistic, but yeah, at the minute I'm kind of liking the new ones for now. I think they match the theme very well with the shape of the eyes and just the makeup style in general. They match really well. So yeah, these are pretty cool. These ones look pretty realistic. The only thing that bothers me sometimes is the fact that they have this pink line that you just can't color for some reason. These ones are also cool. I like these ones. I do like these ones, but not as much. I still like them though. So for this look, the eyes are pretty exaggerated, so I think I'm gonna go with these ones. I actually really like these ones, and she has really light eyes, so we're gonna go with a light color that's I'm still gonna keep to as similar as I can. So I'm gonna go with somewhere here, maybe a little bit darker. Okay, we go for this. And then for shading, I like to make it just around skin tone, but a little bit either lighter or darker. And then I'm pretty sure they added free Guerrero makeup, which you can use. I'm not actually sure where it is. Hold on. Okay, I personally have the DLC code, so whenever I'm doing Guerrero, usually I use this. I feel like this is such a good piece of makeup. It adds highlights to the eyes, and it looks really cool. And obviously it adds the lashes, which are very good. And then usually whenever I'm making a realistic face, I will always go to the eyeshadow category and then scroll all the way down till I find this 125. I add this, and you can play around with the colors a little bit and then just see how it looks. But this is something that just adds depth to the eyes. Let me show you with and without. It's got no depth around here, and then with it adds it all around the eyes, which is cool. It just helps them blend in with the face and show that they're like, you know, it's a feature, it's not just a smooth face. And then usually I like to add some kind of skin texture because I feel like faces look very plain without it sometimes. My personal favorites are, I use this one, wait, not this one. I use 534 quite often. I make it pretty dark, and then usually I just drag it under here, but this is too bright this time because it's Gyaru and it's a very like contour. So you can just make this the opacity less and change the color a little bit to help it blend in, but I don't think I'm going to use that for this one. I also use this one, 438, and then do the same thing just to help it blend in a little bit. And then we'll go to eyebrows next. So this one, the eyebrows are quite thin. We are going to go for the same kind of look. They look kind of natural as well, not too shaped. Something like this maybe. Let me see how it colors. No, I don't like the fact that it's like pointing the wrong direction compared to the original. But again, I don't want something too like thin or shaped. These ones do look similar actually, like a similar shape, but they don't look very natural, so I'm not going to use these. So I'm going to be using these eyebrows. I think these ones are pretty similar shape. They look natural, and we're going to try and get a similar color. So like somewhere around here, I think maybe a little bit more up. Okay, looks fine. And the lips are quite big, but obviously we're trying to make it look realistic, so we don't want to go too crazy, but we are going to try and stick with like a kind of, you know, bigger lip look. And I want to try and stick to a similar color, but I don't think the color was the most accurate. So we are going to change the lip color slightly, I think. So Gyarus have very pink lips, but I think the pink used in the original face was almost like the wrong shade of pink, at least from what I'm picturing. I think somewhere around here is not it when you step out. That's another thing. When you do your makeup in the chair, stepping out is always going to change how it looks. So you kind of have to readjust some things. So I sometimes like to do things like lips outside of the chair. Okay, somewhere like this I think looks pretty Gyaru and on theme. So I think we'll leave it around here because they use a lot of like nudes and pinks. But we are going to slightly change this just a little bit. We're going to turn this down slightly and maybe move this color a little tiny bit. And then I'm going to just play around with the highlight just a little bit. Again, this is something that you want to do outside of the makeup booth just so you can see how it is actually going to look in the game lighting. It does change like slightly wherever you go, but you're going to get a much better picture of what it's actually going to look like when you're standing out here. And the way to be able to recolor outside of it is just you press on whatever feature you want to recolor, so this, and then you just jump out the chair with the color wheel still up. And you can just play around a little bit. This looks fine to me, I think. So the eyes, of course, don't look the most realistic. They look pretty decent, but if you wanted to go even more realistic, you can go to the male section of the eyes, and my personal favorite is these ones here, 195. But I don't think it gives the right vibe for this. Like, it looks good, don't get me wrong, it does look good, but it's not, you know, those hyper big eyes, because these are quite slim eyes. But yeah, that would also work. So we're going to save this. And then we're going to compare it to the old face, which is... I do wish we could recolor the pink bits of the eyes, because obviously in the original it's white, and I feel like it would make it look a lot more similar, just because we also changed the lip color, but do definitely see it being pretty similar still. And like I said, with it being more realistic, I think these lips just fit the makeup style a lot better than the original, these ones. So I do, in that sense, think it's still a more realistic version of this particular face. So I went and added a hair combo, and this is the before face, previous one, the old preset, and this is the revamped one, so you can see the difference. As you can see, this one's a lot more realistic than that one. There's depth around the eyes, there's highlights in the right places, there's texture on the skin, the colors are a lot more blended in, and altogether there's a lot more depth in the face than obviously this one. This is not the most realistic face because, as I said, it's very stylized makeup style, and while you can definitely make it look a little bit more realistic, I think this was a kind of mid-ground between making it look realistic and staying somewhat true to the kind of face. So the second face that we are going to be recreating in a more realistic style is going to be this one here. And this is a pretty old face, but I do like it in a sense that I think it's got potential to be a pretty good face if it's more realistic. So as usual, we're going to start with the contour, and I'm going to pick this one for this. We're going to make it pretty dark, and then we are going to go straight to the other section, and we're going to pick this. So this look is quite soft, but we still want it to look realistic, so that's why we're adding these are darker kind of cheekbones. You just have a highlight in the middle of a face, but I pretty much always add this anyway for a highlight, just so it again adds depth and builds contrast in the face, so it looks a lot more realistic anyway. So we're going to leave it like this for now. It might be a little bit too bright, we'll have to go back and readjust later. Then we're going to go for the nose. She has quite a small nose, and honestly I think that my favorite nose will work for this one pretty well. This one's one of my favorite because it's very good for realistic faces. It colors very well, and it has two toggles, one for the actual nose part, and it kind of only colors one half, which is like the shadow. So already there's a lot of depth in the nose, and then it has its own highlight which you can also color. And again, it colors really well, so it's perfect for your realistic faces as long as it fits. So we're gonna go with that for now, and then we're gonna go straight to the eyes. And for me, I think it's gonna be these ones that we're gonna use with the brown eyes. I think this color should work pretty well. And then again, we're gonna go straight to the eyeshadow in the feminine section, scroll all the way down. And this is something I do on literally every single face. I add this, and then it makes the eyelids look so good. Right now they look kind of red, so we need to adjust it a little bit. Maybe turn the opacity down very slightly. But then again, I forgot to color the shading of the eyes. Let me neutralize that a bit by bringing it around the blue area. Around here is good because it blends in a lot more with the skin now. And then the lashes we can color if you want, but I kind of like them white because they stand out a little bit more. This time I'm going to move on to the eyebrows right now. These are quite straight eyebrows and they're very dark. Honestly, these eyebrows work. These work fine for me. And she has a little bit of makeup going on, so we're going to add some blush. This one works kind of well. Definitely add some detail around the face, and this is around the same kind of area. We can kind of add that blush and then play with the opacity a little bit and see what works. And personally, I think maybe around this color works. Somewhere around there. And then we're going to go and add some skin texture. So this time I'm going to use this one. It's 025. This one's really good because it gives quite a lot of that skin texture all over the face. And then we can just turn the opacity down slightly, just so where we can see the texture, but it's not overpowering the face. And then obviously, since this face has facial piercings, we're just going to go ahead and add some. And for me personally, I have DLC codes that have got really good piercings, so I'm going to go ahead and go to toy codes. And then we're going to have a look. Actually, to be fair, I don't think the toy codes have the right kind of piercing. They don't. So we're just going to go in normal female and then scroll down to other. Then we're going to have a look through the piercings and see what fits best. I feel like this piercing works pretty decent. And then we're going to go and add some lips. So for actual really realistic lips, I prefer more thin ones because a lot of the lips on here are very pouty, and I've said this for a long time. They don't look like a natural resting face, at least some of them, because some of them are very exaggerated. For example, if we go to the feminine section, and let me just find an example of what I'm talking about. For example, you can tell by the way that the mouth is that she's pouting, and I don't mind these lips. I do like them, but I don't think they're the most realistic lips. I think if they were a tiny bit smaller and a little bit less pouty, they would be a little bit more realistic. So we're going to go to the male section. And honestly, I don't hate how this looks, but we're going to go to the male section and go through some. The only thing is, sometimes I notice that the gap between the nose and the mouth when you use male lips is a little bit bigger than the gap between feminine lips and feminine noses. But if you use a nose piercing like this, for example, it slightly increases how far the nose appears it comes down. So it decreases this gap and it looks a little bit more natural. So I personally kind of like these lips. These lips are really good. And the lip color was pink before. So we are going to go for a slightly more pink lip, but not as bright. I think just because I'm not the biggest fan of very overly bright lipstick. So this is like the base face. And obviously you can change it a little bit. Like this one looks more natural. But again, we can go and add lashes and see how they work. So see, in the original one, the lashes are very big, and that's fine. You can add these lashes in whatever shape and toggle you want. This is pretty much the face done. And obviously, this is my take on the face. And it is quite a bit different to the original one, but that's just because the proportions are a lot smaller, a lot more realistic. In the original one, she had really huge eyes. I'm about to show you. Where is that face? Yeah, here. So she had really huge eyes, really huge eyelashes, and a really big pouty lips. But in the more realistic one, it's a lot more proportionate to what we'd see on a real person rather than a cartoon. So it is going to look a bit different proportions wise, but that's just because it's more realistic. And that's pretty much how I would do this realistic face. Obviously, when you're making your own faces, you can use whatever features that you like. These are just features that I prefer and that I thought kind of match the face. But this is personally just my style of face, so... And I know this also isn't a part of custom makeup, but something that I do with all of my faces is I like to frame the face quite a lot, just because it slims the face down and takes away some of that like blocky look. And of course, in real life, you don't have a head that's like this shape. Yeah, slimming it down with hair helps a lot. This is personally one of my favorites to use. I've used this for like hair for face framing for like a long time. And I'm just gonna give her brown hair because I feel like, I don't know, she gives me like brown brunette hair vibes, you know. Slim the face with this. Another one of my favorites to use to make like more realistic hair combos, I guess, and just to add to the like realism feature overall, is this hair right here, and then I toggle it to only bangs, and then I make it like quite a bit smaller. Obviously, however small you want it depends on, you know, personal preference and also the rest of the hair combo to make it fit. But usually I do this after, but I'm just showing you now before I do the rest. But it helps frame the face a little bit, but it also gives these like random wispy bits because obviously in real life your hair's not gonna look perfect all the time. You're gonna have like strands here and there. But yeah, that's one of the hair pieces that I really love using. This one is also really good for framing the face if you pick only bangs and then make it smaller. Okay, so I went ahead and added the hair combo to this face, and I'm going to show you the before and after. So just keep in mind that it will look quite a bit different again because this is a very cartoonish style. And when you turn it into a realistic style, you're getting, you know, smaller eyes, smaller lips. So it will look a little bit different. So here's the before, and then here is the after. And of course, you don't have to use the eyes that I do or the lips that I do. If you want to go for a more cartoonish look that's a little bit more similar, you can, you know, change the eyes and still have more realistic skin and kind of details around the eyes. You can kind of mix and match. For example, if I was going to do it like more similar to the original, I'd probably use some, you know, some bigger eyes. I do kind of like these ones, to be honest. These ones are pretty good. But, you know, as you can see, whichever eyes you pick, it's like, it's gonna still look pretty realistic because of the skin, how well like kind of rendered it is. Yeah, so if I was gonna make it a little bit more similar to the original, I'd probably use, you know, some eyes like this, and then the lips, I could make them, you know, somewhat more pink. You know, you can see it's a little bit more similar, but still quite realistic looking. But this is, you know, realistic in my style. I find that my realistic style is, you know, more natural. I don't really include makeup too much. Like, for example, let's say she was wearing some cool eyeshadow or something. I don't know, maybe like this. I guess kind of similar to like what the Brat one looks like. Yeah, I don't really add makeup too much for the realistic looks, but as you can see, it still looks fine with makeup. So if you want to like sacrifice bits and pieces, so I took off the blush and added this makeup, you can do that. You know, you could add some more piercings, do whatever, and it looks a lot more realistic than, for example, if I save this, then I go to this. You see what I mean? Honestly, it kind of looks like I recreated this face more than the other face, but yeah, this is mostly just, you know, my preference. So that is why it does look a little bit different. It's my interpretation of how I would do a realistic face based on the preset. Because I do get some comments saying, you know, it's very different, but it's just because given the features that it started with, these are the features that I interpret as, you know, sort of similar but more realistic. But again, you're open to use, you know, any features that you want to use. You can use, you know, big eyes, whatever eyes you want to use, whatever lips you want to use, you're more than welcome to do that. Yeah, so let's just pretend that this was the face that I was recreating. They definitely do look pretty similar, at least a little bit more than you know, this one. But again, I've explained a little bit of why it looks pretty different. On second thoughts, I could make it look a little bit more similar if I take away the blush. It's going to take away a little bit, but not too much. And then I add, let's say, even this around the eyes, I feel like will help it look a little bit more similar. And again, it still looks pretty realistic in my opinion. You can definitely see the depth, and I feel like this makes the eyes look really interesting actually. But yeah, so if this is too plain and basic for you, you can always add like different details. You don't have to add blush. I feel like blush is like the most thing that you can sacrifice. Anyway, so this was more like a plain kind of basic realistic face kind of tips. I do want to show some more kind of unique and interesting realistic faces rather than just, you know, a blank plain canvas. But that would have to be for the next video. And I'm also going to show you a good amount of other tips that I use in some of my faces to make it look a little bit more realistic than even some of, you know, these faces. Because again, these are quite, you know, just like a blank, very simply built realistic face. But yeah, that will be for the next video. Just to recap on some of the tips that we went over. So choose your base. If you want to make a realistic face, usually you want to use these more harsh ones like this, or, you know, this, or some of the male ones. Any that have like a harsh cheekbone. And usually you want to make it a little bit dark and then add this highlight right here to kind of, you know, show depth. Show that there's like a difference in how far away certain aspects are of the face. It just makes it look a little bit more round than flat, you know, a little bit more structure to it. So that's one thing you want to do. Let me use a kind of better example so you can kind of see the difference a little bit more clearly. There you go. You can start seeing like the difference in structure. You can clearly see that that's, you know, in the back. This is in the front. So highlight's important. The darker contour is important to making a realistic face. Skin texture is also important because again, this does look very smooth and flat, even though there's a difference in, you know, depth. You still want to make the skin a little less flat. So use something that's going to give you a little bit more texture. So usually this is going to be like freckles. Freckles are a really good way, and there's like plenty of different options that you can use. So, you know, it's up to you, whichever you prefer. Turning the opacity down helps a lot, or putting it under the highlight and making it really dark so it still appears. But, you know, using the opacity is just a little bit easier and a little bit more customizable. Aside from that, the other main really big thing to making realistic faces is using something to set the eyes in. So again, I'll just go over this really quick. These are some eyes. Already it looks pretty good, but then we're going to add the eyeshadow that I always add, and then we're going to go back and change the shading because again I forgot. I'm going to make it a little bit more blue, and there you go. You can see the eyes already look a lot more, you know, realistic, detailed. They're, you know, got a lot more depth to them. And that is pretty much the main important tips in my opinion. As you can see already with these tips, you know, you're getting there, you know, half of the face already built, and it's looking pretty good. It's not, you know, it's not really too plain. But yeah, that's a short summary of the tips. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you can at least use, you know, a couple of these things, maybe learn something new. I'm not sure. I will be making some other follow-up videos again, showing, you know, different styles of faces amongst other content. I do plan on doing some rounds, some challenges, some kind of gameplay videos, maybe some recreating, you know, some of your guys' faces in my style or outfits, whatever you guys want to see. If you have anything that you do want to see, or you want to hear my opinion on, or, you know, how I do something, leave it in the comments and I will try my best to get back to at least some of them. If you did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing and turning on the notification button so you don't miss an upload. I don't post long forms often, but I do plan on posting some more. I've been getting, you know, requests for a lot more, so yeah, expect some more in the future soon. And if you did make it to the end of the video, then leave a comment with the van emoji so I know. Again, I hope you found this video at least interesting or helpful, and I hope you have a great day.